Ladies and gentlemen, Football Scoop Podcast. I am Scott Roussel. That is John Brice. We're here to talk about Wisconsin. With it appears Jim Leonard will be named the permanent head coach shortly after regular season close versus Minnesota. So, quick catch up on this. Paul Chryst gets let go after they lose Ohio State, Illinois. Those two games back to back. It's a weird deal. Chris McIntosh, the athletic director, McIntosh calls Chryst into his office with hey, we got to be doing things better. And Chryst, as sources share with me, didn't really appreciate the way that conversation unfolded. And it just got more heated than either of the two sides expected for it to go. And the way it played out unexpectedly, because of something said in the room, Chris McIntosh fired Paul Chryst. McIntosh that time, he's got Jim Leonard on. Everybody knows Jim Leonard's a very bright, up-and-coming coach, obviously incredible player. Up-and-coming coach, well-regarded coach. McIntosh makes him the interim with the full expectation, oh, goodness, we need Jimmy to show some great stuff the rest of the way because we certainly don't want to bring in a search and then we'd probably lose Jim in connection with bringing in a new head coach. And, gosh, we really weren't in a bad spot. We're a pretty good football team. What did I just do here? That's kind of what was happening. It's not how he would say it, but that's really what happened. So Jim Leonard steps in. They had Northwestern that week. Northwestern's really having a bad year. They handled Northwestern. They lose in double overtime, I believe, Michigan State. And McIntosh, the athletic director, is like, come on, Jimmy, I need you to win, buddy. Let's get this right. So, thankfully, Jim Leonard puts together two solid dubs, Purdue and Maryland. They go to Iowa, and the plan is you beat Iowa, you're our new head coach. They still have the state law. You got to post the job for 7 days and all that stuff. But I'm telling you, right then, he beats Iowa. Jim Leonard's the next head coach the permanent head coach of Wisconsin. And they don't. And McIntosh is in a tough spot. You got 2 games left. You got to go to beleaguered Nebraska. And then you got Minnesota at the end. Whoo, buddy. It's a good thing for Chris McIntosh. The Jim Leonard rallied the troops. They get a last-minute win. They beat Nebraska. McIntosh exhales, and he can sell. Jim Leonard's my guy. John Brice, I'll hand it over to you. Are you hearing anything different? Because that's the way it happened, as best all my sources in Wisconsin.
I think that's incredibly on the nose. I would point out that that it wasn't just only the name brand of Iowa that would have helped cement Leonard getting that job and being named or being prepared to name the permanent head coach after that win. The significance there was it made Wisconsin bowl eligible. The Badgers are now bowl eligible. So I don't think we can overlook that. Obviously, you get more cachet from a win against Iowa and the dean of the Big Ten coaches in Kirk Ferentz than you do against a fellow interim-led program that's completely downtrodden in Nebraska. And you can say either Wisconsin got pretty damn lucky to win that game yesterday, or you can say they showed the great resolve that we've always seen from Jim Leonard as a player and from his defenses that he's coordinated. And that's why they scored in the waning seconds of that contest to win on the road 15-14. Now they close with Minnesota. A chance if they can beat Minnesota, which they absolutely can, and then win a bowl game, you're talking about they could finish as an 8-win team. Jim Leonard would have 6 wins then in that scenario as the interim, after they not only got off to that 2-3 start that featured their first 2 Big Ten losses by a combined 55 points, but they lost at home to a Washington State team that at the time nobody knew a lot about, but did not expect a lot of, and against which Wisconsin had been a heavy favorite. And so it was all those factors that I think led to a couple of guys puffing up their chest and saying, you think you can do this? Do this? Okay, I think I can do this. I am doing this. And that's to your point. Turnkey Search, I believe, handled the process. I know from a coach, from the agent of a coach who was extremely interested in the Wisconsin job and had some ties there. It was pointed out to me 2 to 3 weeks ago that perhaps Turnkey has often conducted some searches that end up resulting in the interim coach being named. I need to be clear. I have not done the research to verify that, but this agent brought it up to me on his own and emphasized that and made it very clear. I do think that there were conversations with Matt Rule. I do think that there was another mega name out there in college football, a guy who's been as hot as anybody in the last few years. I had some college personnel people tell me this week they'd maybe made one big run at this guy and floated a huge type of per annual salary toward him. But obviously it's going in the direction of Jim Leonhard, barring something wholly unforeseen at this point.
All I heard, and I'll tell you, John and I, very different contacts, but we both do it for the same team, and we speak to a lot of people in the industry. We speak with a lot of coaches, a lot of athletic administration, a lot of agents. And all I've heard about this search all along was Chris McIntosh, the athletic director, has had some, I'll say, tertiary phone calls around the periphery of a couple of coaches. Just, hey, if we have to do an actual search, what's the interest? Especially with a couple of people that you would firmly expect to be involved in a Wisconsin search. A guy who has won national championships in the state of Wisconsin and a former highly successful coordinator at Wisconsin. I think McIntosh has spoken with agents of both to kind of gauge, hey, would you be receptive to having a sit-down interview if we need to in the future? I don't think it's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't expect it to happen. I expect Jim Leonhard to be the next head coach of Wisconsin.
Yeah, and I think it could be with that 7-day state law, and that law is common in every state, EEO laws and things like that. But you could see Jim Leonhard introduced as the permanent head coach next Sunday, I believe, especially if they can get that home win against a Minnesota team and close out a 7-5 regular season. And again, that would put Jim Leonhard at 5-2 down the stretch. He should have won. They should have won the game at Michigan State, had every opportunity to do so and look good. And that's the thing. Like, they've had a couple of losses down the stretch. They've never been blown out. They've never looked like they didn't belong on the field. And you can say, well, that's because they didn't have a Michigan down the stretch. They'd already lost to Ohio State. Ohio State has vastly superior personnel right now to Wisconsin. Illinois does not. Illinois should have never beaten Wisconsin by 24 points and really throttled them down the way that the Illini did. So, but to your point, and wrapping up here, I will say, yes, as this search went into it, I think there was very much a goal for a self-fulfilling prophecy that Jim Leonhard would win enough and that Wisconsin was maybe a really good offensive coordinator and some tweaks there from being back where the Badgers want to be.
And some recruiting. And some transfers. They need some dudes. They just
right. Yeah, that's what I said. Offense coordinator and some tweaks in personnel. So
they got the dairy bar. They're good up front. We need to recruit some more dudes, and they're gonna be just fine. All right, Football Scoop Podcast. Happy to do this anytime. On Twitter, he's at John D. Brice 1. I'm at Football Scoop. Appreciate your time today. Everybody have a great Sunday.